Blog Talk Radio.
Tuesday night during the fall of October. What is today? The 17th, 2023. Glad to have y'all here with us tonight as we are in our final episodes of the 2023 season. We're in the final races of the 2023 season. We have a lot to reflect back on. What a year it's been. The addition of Miss Lee coming on board and joining the show. Structure has changed the way that we've done things. We've tried several things this year that we've never done before, and some things were good, some things weren't. We were able to grow from that, and we've had the addition of the Race Chat Live, Went to Nation Sports Race Chat Live exclusive interview where we went old school and brought back the old interviews, and it's been really fun doing that with Mr. CJ Sports. Of course, you can find those on Monday night. Last night's was one of the coolest interviews I think I've ever done with Parker Starpoli, Patrick Starr.
Patrick Starpoli.
Oh, my gosh, that kid. Wow. And he's not a kid either. He's 33 years old, a doctor, a surgeon, a Harvard graduate. Did an amazing interview last night. Me and Mr. CJ Sports really enjoyed that one, and it'll be one that I will remember for a very long time to come. Most shows I probably have some. I did over the weekend. Somehow I become a famous race car announcer. I don't know how that happened. Racetrack announcer, but I'm famous now, so I guess we'll be flying in Learjets and smoking big cigars and all the other things that come with people getting famous. So outside of that, and signing autographs all the time, but anyway, no, I had a great weekend. Of course, it was the Fall Classic, and it's amazing what technology does and the streaming services and how you find yourself you find yourself in a position that you've admired your whole life. I've always been a race fan. I've always heard commentating from racing. I've always been, at the edge of my seat with racing. Like my dad took me to dirt track. I didn't go to my first cup race until I was a grown man. So a lot of my racing was behind the TV and hearing commentators and broadcasters, people from Chris Economaki to Ned Jarrett and Ken Squire, Eli Gold, so many of the good ones. Dale Jarrett and Rusty Wallace, and the ones who are there now, Darrell Waltrip, and of course Dale Earnhardt Jr. Boy, we've come a long way, I guess, in commentating. So I don't know where I fit in that style of broadcasting, but let me tell you, I'm just privileged to do the job that I have, and it's just I appreciate all the support that I get, and I appreciate my family for allowing me the opportunity to not just do that, but also come on here with you guys and talk racing. So that was my rant. That was my gig for the day. Miss Lee Reed, how are you today? Cass Taylor, how are you, sir?
Good evening.
We missed last week because of technical difficulty.
I feel good knowing that, the one show I could actually try to tune into and actually talk to you guys, because, I couldn't talk to you guys for a few days because Facebook is, far on the left side of this bullshit, but whatever.
Right. Yeah, and that's amazing, all that happened last week and whatnot. And, of course, this week, Kyle Larson wins, and everybody knows I don't like showing up for work when Kyle Larson wins because I'm just Kyle Larson over. I'm fatigued by this guy. He's, the reincarnation of. Yeah, I mean that's going to be all the hoopla and all the hype. Kyle Larson in the championship race. I'm surprised it already hadn't started. But I'm sure as the races go along, that's all we'll hear from commentators is, Kyle Larson racing for a championship. So they'll crown him before he even gets there, and that's fine too. But, the show must go on, so I am here, and we're going to talk a little bit about racing. Of course, guys, we reflect back on the season. Silly season's about over with. Yeah, we've heard a little bit of news. Sheldon Creed asked for his dismissal at Richard Childress Racing. John Hunter Nemechek's going to jump over into the 42 for this upcoming race. There's been little bits and pods of, information that's come out, but for the most part, there is a rumor, I believe, Noah Gregson may wind up at the 10 car over at Stewart Haas Racing. Outside of that, our silly season's over. It's been a heck of a season. It's been a grind. Ms. Lee, I thank you for your dedication. This is new for you. You've played a lot behind the scenes, and I know that at times it must have been almost a struggle for you. If you think that every single time that I've come on at night on Tuesday that this is what I really wanted to do, that I didn't have my mind in a million other places, but somehow or another after every show that we do together, I know that I've got the right crew around me, and I feel bad that I feel that way sometimes, but it is the pressure of life and everything else, and you just want to throw your hands up and say, give up, but keep on. And I know you do too, and that's what I admire the most about you, Miss Lee. Thank you for joining us this year and making this a journey that I don't know how we got here without you. I really don't. I don't think we did get here without you. I think we've needed you every step of the way, and now I think in a form or way, in some kind of weird way, you needed us, and that's how this happened. And and we love you.
You're making me blush, Chris. Come on now.
Well,
yeah,
let's talk about racing
it's been a struggle. The past year's really been tough for me, but you know what? And there have been nights that I've been like, nah, I don't think I want to do this, but it's like, nah, I better. And you know what? And it's great, and it's been great, and it's been good for me. So that's
amazing. That makes my heart feel good. All right, so Taz, you're back. Unfortunate last week and getting in Facebook jail and all, but we're behind all that now. And you're a free man. And so, you know, what we've seen the last couple of weeks, I think the biggest news right now is the Ryan Blaney penalty. I'd like to know some of you guys' thoughts, especially that when the penalty come down versus how quick it was rescinded. Have we ever seen a penalty rescinded before? You know, if anybody caught Dave Moody on Monday, he was really quick to start throwing people under the bus after saying that there was no performance issue along with the shot being shorter, but then went on to say that teams that were behind the ball were going to push whatever it took to get in, which told me that everything he said in the beginning was just BS, because if they're pushing the limits, then they're going to push limits in areas where they can get a performance enhancer out of it, right? They're not going to push the issue if it's not going to help performance, right? So that's kind of where we are, and I want to know you guys' thoughts on what transpired here. Ryan Blaney was disqualified, and then NASCAR come in later and rescinded the disqualification and claimed that it was a problem in the template. All right, we'll start with you, Taz, Taylor. What are your thoughts on how that process happened, and what do you think? It's your opinion. I want to hear it.
Well, I am giving NASCAR some props because they came out and said that because as quickly as the penalty was handed, it was just about as quickly rescinded. And they did admit where the problem was in terms of where NASCAR went wrong. And I'm glad they didn't, hide behind the 8 ball with a lot of the penalties that have been handed out this year. But in my opinion, I feel like if you are going to post-race tech these cars right after the race, you should have everything good to go. Meaning it doesn't matter if it's a little a measuring device. I don't care if it's a little scanner that checks things over. But it's just that if you need to have all your ducks in a row before you have cars start going through your tech shed. I mean, it's a big deal. I mean, you sit here and have Ryan Blaney, who's got, a legit shot next race to try to gain some points and get himself in the championship 4. Then you disqualify him, and now he was in a basically must-win situation. And yeah, they corrected the problem 24 hours later. But, I mean, I'm sure Ryan Blaney and Penske were sitting there like, oh, crap, we got disqualified. Now we got to go back to the drawing board and figure out how to get ourselves not only in the top 5, but in a must-win situation where we got to be running up front. We don't have a choice at this point because we don't have much room to play with for points.
Well,
all right.
I agree that it was good that NASCAR, came back and said, okay, we were wrong, from the get-go. But you know what? They should have had all of that done and said before they announced the DNQ.
I agree. I agree with you to a point, Miss Lee, but I'm going to bring something to the table here that I think is going to relate to it almost exactly.
Okay.
That would be, is this a type of situation where when you show up to the courtroom and say, hey, was that radar recently calibrated? Right? Is that how this issue was handled with Penske? Did Roger Penske pick up the phone and call NASCAR out on something that had to do with the template, because we don't know exactly what was wrong with the template. We know that there was a malfunction in the template used to judge it. But what Dave Moody stated was that NASCAR had been informed that teams were eating up the metal in these components to stretch them out, but when they rolled through tech, they were longer. But when the metal cooled off, it would tighten it up and it would make it in a different spot. So if they knew that much information about the type of malfunction that this shock would have somehow mysteriously become shorter than the rest of them, then obviously there was a reason to check Ryan Blaney's right shock, right? And so what I believe has happened here is somebody called checkmate on the template that was actually used. So it's not saying that Ryan Blaney didn't actually do something. Ryan Blaney's shock wasn't that. It probably was something wrong with it. Just the part of being a template not showing up correctly or something to that point, I believe is where NASCAR was forced to rescind it. I mean, does that make do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes sense, but still, NASCAR knows there's very little wiggle room for these guys with these cars. So I think it's on NASCAR that they should have had, like Taz said, they should have had all their ducks in a row.
Right.
Before
my next
making
playoff
the
car.
announcement.
Right. My second question would be to this is, did Penske mislead? Did Penske get special treatment? Could Maury Gallagher have called NASCAR and called them out on the same thing that Roger Penske did? Because we've seen a situation with Hendrick where a penalty was rescinded at a time where it was supposed to be. Then we've seen the situation with the wheel set and Brett Keselowski, and that penalty was basically, it went through appeal process. This is the first penalty that I've ever seen NASCAR actually rescind on its own without going through an appeal process.
Right.
Which tells me that there's something a little bit different about how this was handled. This isn't the typical NASCAR made a mistake here. This is somebody called out and said, wait a minute, that specific device you're using doesn't really work, and here's why. And then that's when NASCAR has to be like, oh. So I don't know if that's the correct theory, but as the information has come out about this certain part and the reason why NASCAR would be looking there in the first place, similar to why NASCAR looked the windshield of Kevin Harvick, which is not just a typical place I think that you would look. And then for Dave Moody to say that these teams are pushing whatever they can, the ones in the back, they have nothing to lose trying to get into the championship. Right. So they are pushing the threads further than anybody.
Right. Exactly. So, so in that respect, NASCAR has to kind of widen their net, and maybe they widened it just a little too much this time and overstepped. Or, like you said, did somebody make a phone call? Who knows?
My question to this is, if they use this same template on every car, then how did Ryan Blaney get DQ'd and everybody else did not?
Hey, see, that's another thing that leads it into question of why. So there must have been a specific reason why NASCAR went to Ryan Blaney, just like the window of Kevin Harvick. But where they got him at was that template was not correct. And somehow Penske knew that. Somehow somebody in the engineering department knew that the template that NASCAR was using was not going to give a specific or correct measurement. And this entire time, they probably sat with that in their back pocket and waited for the moment that, hey, we've got them in this area because they're not even checking it right. They're not checking it like it's supposed to be. So,
right,
you know,
and that goes back to where I'm saying, you know, there's very little wiggle room for these teams with these cars. And so,
they had to have a reason why they went there, right?
Somebody must, like you said, somebody on the engineering team saw something, and they took advantage of it.
Right. And then when it was called out, it was like an ace of spades in the back pocket. It was like a cheat code.
Exactly.
Hey, your template doesn't work. Yeah, we'll correct the problem, but your template doesn't work, and we'll prove it to you. And that's where NASCAR said, well, we don't want this to go to appeal because we'll definitely lose it, so we might as well rescind it. And that had to have been a suck in the thumb moment for whoever it was in that damn office that had to tell the leaders of NASCAR that, you know, boys, I think we screwed this one up.
Yep.
Big Bill would not be happy right now. Because that's got to be embarrassing, right? NASCAR rescinded a penalty. I mean, you know, you don't hear that very often in the sports world. I just thought it was odd, and I thought that,
you don't hear that. You don't really hear that, especially in motorsports, because, I mean, post-race tech, they usually say disqualification, and then you don't hear anything after that. You don't hear a series, or you don't hear a series or a track or anybody sitting here saying, here's a DQ, and then 24 hours later, oh, no, not really. It's usually the other way around. It's usually no DQ, and then all of a sudden you find out something, there's a DQ because somebody had the wrong tire or somebody had the wrong fuel or whatever.
Right. Most likely, this was a "I got you" moment, and that's you know, it's only going to be a few of those jokers in the pack or whatever you want to call it in life, and I think Penske was able to use that one. And hey, it keeps Ron Blaney in the race. And as a matter of fact, the second subject that I wanted to talk about was the effect that this would have on Martin Truex Jr. Look, you know, you had a dog shit race. Your crew chief tried to go all or broke when you could have just went out and ran a race like everybody else. You know, it was kind of, I didn't understand the Hail Mary moment. Then, you know, after Blaney's penalty, I think they were +3. I don't even know where they're sitting now, but I feel like Ron Blaney probably put himself back above Truex in at least the top 4, right? So I'm not sure.
No.
No?
So when Blaney got penalized, he was like -53 or something like that, under the cut line. He's still under the cut line.
Still minus.
But he's -17. Right now, above the cut line, obviously Larson, who's moved on. Byron sits +9. Truex and Hamlin both sit +2. Bell's -2 under. Reddick is -16. Blaney's -17. Buescher's -23. So, I mean, all those points Blaney scored up, literally, I'm sure him and Penske sat there and was, I mean, that's a big difference, getting DQ'd, going from -17 to a -53. I mean, it's a night and day difference. You're going from, we have a legit contendership versus we're now in a must-win situation early on.
Yeah, and trust me, I feel like Ryan Blaney could really pull it off at Homestead regardless. Like, you know, the last thing that you do is count a Penske car out, right? I think we found out over the years that's probably not you don't count one of them out until they're officially out. Just like, you know, you're not going to count out Kyle Larson, you know. Obviously, he's probably the most serious threat to win another championship. William Byron, definitely could be there. I think that this race for sure. And Martinsville is typically a really good track for Hendrick. But what's interesting is how all those, I almost call them Pontiacs, Toyotas are all stuck there together. Bell, Hamlin, and Truex. You would think with the year that Hamlin had, he's the guaranteed spot. But at first Ryan Blaney was out of this, right? Well, now he may make his way in, and he can, find himself in between the Hendrick cars and maybe a Joe Gibbs car. Are we leaving Tyler Reddick out of this, though? We're going to Homestead, guys.
My only concern with Reddick
is Tyler Reddick the big upset?
I believe Tyler Reddick could be the big jaw dropper, as Miss Lee has mentioned in the past, in the last few weeks. Reddick has been one of those drivers this year that you expect him to run well, and he doesn't. And then when you kind of sleep on him, that's when he shows up.
Tyler Reddick won a championship. Y'all, quit laughing at me. That broke my heart. I had a big old piece of chocolate ice cream that fell on the floor. Tyler Reddick won a championship at Homestead, guys. They doubted him then, too.
I mean, if you look at the round of 8 tracks, Las Vegas, Homestead, and Martinsville, these drivers have all won at these tracks on the Cup side. And the reason why I say the Cup side is because Reddick has 2 wins at these tracks, but they're on the Xfinity side.
Exactly.
But
Byron, that's right.
Byron, Hamlin, Larson, and Truex are the only four that have won at all 3 of these tracks. Now, for this round, Reddick has won at 2 of these 3, but as I mentioned, those are on the Xfinity side. Ryan Blaney and Chris Buescher have not won at any one of these 3 round of 8 tracks. And Christopher Bell has only won at Martinsville. So, and I do want to mention of what you mentioned, Chris, about Denny Hamlin and the Toyota side of things. You mentioned a couple weeks ago, I do believe, that I personally believe if Denny Hamlin can figure out a way to beat these Hendrick cars, this is his championship. This is all set up for him. Because he runs well at Martinsville, and he runs well at Homestead, and he's a multi-time winner. He's a multi-time winner in Phoenix. If he can beat Hendrick, this is his championship, set in stone.
Wow. Wouldn't that be something if his own car took him out of the chances for a championship? What if Tyler Reddick wins the race and Denny Hamlin misses it by 3? Man.
Well, he'd be a winner either way.
Well, I think like all the older veteran drivers, you want to see, even though Denny's getting booed, I feel like the Kyle Busch haters had to go somewhere. And most of them jumped on the hate Denny Hamlin bandwagon. But in reality, I think that even the people that hate him would like to see him get that championship just because the guy's got like 60 wins in the Cup Series, okay? Maybe one year it can go right for him. It's almost like everybody pulling for Dale Earnhardt to get that 500 win. Danny's got 3 of those.
But no championship.
but no championship. Isn't that so odd? So,
He's the modern day Mark. He's the modern day Mark Martin, and I'm not saying that in a bad way either.
Martin was loved. Mark Martin was loved by everybody. He was never booed. Denny Hamlin is booed, and people call him Two Finger. Not really sure why though.
The hamster, if you will.
The hamster. Well, I tell you what, if he can get a Cup championship, it would sure look good on his wall. That's crazy. Like, right, we're down to 8 guys. Chris Buescher, I feel like probably is the odd guy out, and there's probably not been a better consistent driver through any of the playoffs. Or really, I've seen some stats that showed the old Winston Cup form, I believe, that actually showed Buescher would be leading the championship. Could you imagine that? Chris Buescher winning the old Cup-style championship format?
Well, he's definitely proven.
I know
he's definitely proven himself to be a good driver this year. You know, he's definitely performed well.
Right.
So
I believe I could.
So with the Winston Cup standings, from what somebody's been documenting here, Denny Hamlin currently leads the point standings. Christopher Bell in second, 6 points behind him. Chris Buescher sits 18 points behind in third. William Byron is fourth, minus 37, although I feel like William Byron probably would be either first or second had he not gotten that penalty earlier in the season. Martin Truex Jr. is your top 5, minus 48. Everyone else from 6th on back to about 23rd is triple digits behind, and from 24th through the rest of the grid is all 4-digit points behind.
Well, there you go. That's cool. Well, I don't know. You know, I mean, we got 8 guys. Only 4 of them are going to go race for a championship. I don't know who to count out. I really don't. Martinsville and Homestead, that's what we've got left before we go to Phoenix. And, you know, typically a Homestead has been a good track for Hendrick, I guess. They've won a few championships there over the years, especially with Jimmy Johnson era. And Kyle Larson, of course, has already won a championship in the at Phoenix. So, you know, William Byron, I guess, is the one. You know, does William mess it up? Does he find a way to fall out of the Final Four? It would take probably some wrecks and stuff for that to happen. But William has found himself quite a few times during the year inconsistent. 1 week he'd be great, the next week he'd fall off. What do you guys thoughts on William Byron?
Yeah, I agree. There's too much inconsistency there.
William Byron inconsistent?
Oh, yeah. But he has been throughout the year.
He's not as inconsistent as other drivers, but yes, there has been inconsistency there.
I'd probably pick William Byron more than anybody.
I feel like Byron has been. I feel like he's inconsistent, but I don't think he's been as bad as in the last few years. Because you got to remember, the last few years, where has he won his races? Within the first 5 races, and then you don't hear anything after that. minus
Yeah, he
the
won 6
one year
races
where
this
minus the 1 year where he won at Daytona and knocked out Jimmy Johnson in the regular season. But this year he's actually won races in different areas. Like he's won on a road course for the first time ever. He's won outside the first. I mean, yeah, he won twice in the first 5 races of the season. He got a win outside the first 5 races. Not much later after that. I kind of feel like, yeah, he's got inconsistencies, but I mean, who really doesn't? But this year, I feel like him and the 24 team may have figured something out.
Yes.
Or at least improved where they were struggling.
Let's get to the final topic here tonight. Definitely wanted to bring to light everybody's biggest storyline of the year. I know I have one picked out for mine. I can share it with y'all first, or I can wait and see what y'all say and throw it out there if it does. Mine's fairly simple.
Go ahead and lead us off, Chris.
Yeah, I don't think anybody expected Chase Elliott to have the year that he had, and really the negative tone that's kind of been set for Chase. At the beginning of the year, he was everybody's golden child, but now as the season has progressed, and it's amazing that this kid's been around 10 years, and all of a sudden, maybe some of that shiny armor that's been all around him has started to fade and maybe rust a little bit. Definitely the perception of Chase, I don't feel like I do feel like has changed in the negative context since his incident. Getting suspended by NASCAR, I think, was not on my bingo card either. Penalties by NASCAR, it seems like maybe here of late they've kind of been picking on Chase Elliott almost. And then as we explored the thought of maybe Jeff Gordon not exactly all in on Chase Elliott, maybe Jeff Gordon thinks that Chase has maybe been a little bit too spoiled and a little bit too over, what's it called, coddled there at the race team. Jeff Gordon didn't have a family name to feed off of, right? Maybe Jeff Gordon didn't think Dale Earnhardt Jr. deserved his spot in racing, where
that's
Jeff Gordon
exactly
had to.
What I was going to bring up was Dale Jr.
Right.
Example. As
maybe,
much as he's loved.
Right. Right. Did he deserve it? And Jimmy Johnson and Jeff Gordon both were a name of their own. They made a name for themselves.
Well, yeah, exactly. And everybody thought that Chase was going to be, the second coming of Jesus. And it's turned out that both personally and professionally, he ain't.
Yeah. So that's kind of my storyline of the year. I don't know if I had it thinking that, Chase Elliott was going to lose some of his popularity.
Well, he's been voted most popular how many years in a row now?
Right. What's his junior left?
Well, we have seen the strength and popularity with Chase Elliott if you look at viewership. Because remember, when he wasn't in the first 6, when he wasn't in the 6 races because of injury, ratings dropped tremendously. And then when he came back, ratings are back up to where they normally are.
Which is weird because, even when he led at Talladega, it wasn't the normal roar. that we've heard in the past when Chase Elliott took the lead. So it's definitely between that and I guess Kyle Busch not getting booed storyline too. But what are you guys? Come on, I don't want to take nothing from y'all. What's your storyline of 2023, Taz?
I was going to touch on something before I got to the storyline of 2023, but we've mentioned Junior, we've mentioned silly season, and Jared brought something up to the table yesterday in the group chat. Somebody said SHR made a mistake on Josh Berry because Josh Berry hasn't really performed in the cup level and this and that, blah, 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 during the substitute races. And Junior says that he's the one to blame because he didn't give Josh Berry everything to be fully successful. We knew Josh Berry was going to go to the Cup Series, whether if it was going to be next year or in the next couple of years. We knew it was going to happen. But we have to sit down and think, should Junior really sit here and blame himself for losing Josh Berry? Or should he not be? Because I feel like Josh Berry didn't really have a choice to go anywhere because he was either going to stay at Junior Motorsports and hope to God a ride opens up at Hendrick, or Josh Berry was going to have to take things in his own manner. Because God forbid, because God only knows if Junior will ever get a Cup charter.
Right. Well, I think it's tough for Junior to sit there and say that they didn't give Josh Berry what he needed. Well, what did they give him? You know, why didn't they give him? Like, was he not worthy enough to get the best? Is that what Junior's saying? Like, you know, where did he come off? I know the whole focus was on getting Josh Berry a Cup ride. So the moment that he signed that contract back in, I guess, June, so Junior just quit giving him good equipment. Is that what he's admitting? Because that's a lot to that's a handful there.
Well, and like Taz brought up, where the heck was he going to go? Hendrick's not getting rid of anybody, right? So, his only path to getting up into Cup full time was to look somewhere else. Can you blame the guy? And I just hope that SHR can do good by him. They haven't done well with moving
people. I feel like Hendrick now with Chase, Larson, Byron, and Bowman, I feel like we're seeing, I'm not trying to compare, but this is the best way I can kind of explain it. I feel like we're seeing the best version of today's version of Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon, Dale Jr., and I guess you could say Mark Martin or Casey Kane, whichever one you want to throw in the mix, because Hendrick was in those 4 or 5 drivers for the longest time. Now those drivers have come and gone and did their time and years in their career. And obviously you have to go younger to get longer. And I feel like Hendrick's got his long-term 4 drivers. So where was Berry going to really go?
Right. Well, I think Bowman, of course, is a big question mark. And at what point in time does Chase feel that he needs to go somewhere else to better grow? I think that the relationship between Jeff Gordon and Chase Elliott has got to improve, or Chase Elliott will seek other places because he will continue to feel like he's not getting the proper treatment, the good equipment. He will make an excuse in his own head of why Kyle Larson and William Byron are whooping him week in, week out. and he'll seek to go somewhere else to prove that he's capable. And that's like he could be very well the biggest free agent move from Hendrick Motorsports since maybe a Dale Earnhardt. Of course, Kyle Larson should have been, but the way that Kyle Larson was let go and the way that it all transtalled that from being a really big deal, it was kind of kept under the smoke, so to speak, so that it wasn't a big deal about it. But if Chase Elliott were to go to the free agent market, it would be the biggest story in NASCAR, and I believe above Kyle Busch moving to Richard Childress, because we all know Kyle Busch is at the peak of his career. Well, Chase Elliott should be 3 or 4 years away from the peak of his career. So it would definitely be big news. But, whether or not Josh Berry would stay at Xfinity until then, I think the biggest thing was getting him a cup ride as quickly as possible. And look, he's going to replace Kevin Harvick. I think that Stewart Haas is going to get their race cars in better shape for next year. Ford has something, obviously. The RFK cars are not having any issue week in, week out. At all racetracks, RFK cars have been fast, and they have Ford power under them. So whatever it is that they're hitting on over at RFK, the rest of the Ford team, Stewart Haas Racing will figure it out. And when they do, Josh Berry's going to be in a good position. There is good young talent over at SHR. I still know Chase Briscoe is a talented race car driver. I believe that. I really do. I think Eric Amarola is not a talented race car driver. I think he's a seat filler.
Ryan Preece has talent. It's there.
Ryan Preece has a ton of talent, right? If the equipment was better, we would see that. That would be on display. And I know Josh Berry has a ton of talent. So for, Junior to take it in his own hands that he wasn't given a Berry proper equipment, I don't think that's right. Sometimes things go your way, sometimes they don't. Barry's been in a lot of wrecks. I don't think Dale Jr. is driving that car. So I've seen Barry in a whole lot of wrecks since June. Those are, probably the reason why he hasn't necessarily had the finishes that he's expected to, because they're too busy rebuilding cars in the shop for him. That's how cars get names, because they're fast and they show up and they win every week. But Barry's going to be fine. SHR is going to be fine. I believe they'll all get things going in the right direction here pretty soon. So what's the storyline? What's your biggest storyline, Ted?
I feel like the big storyline this year, minus the Kevin Harvick final year Cup racing deal.
Farewell to it.
I believe, and maybe this is a shocker, maybe it's not. What I believe, we are seeing a resurgence of Kyle Busch. I understand this is RCR equipment, and I understand Kyle Busch is more a seasoned veteran, or at least getting to that point. But I believe with how Busch has been the last, I'll say 2 years, you can probably stretch it to 3, in comparison to how Busch has been this year, especially how he started. I feel like we're seeing the Kyle Busch, the competitive Kyle Busch we all know, which is a big turnaround, because the last 2 years he's won 2 races, and this year alone he's won 3, maybe 4.
Right.
And he's certainly getting back to being mouthy with his team on the radio.
Well, of course. That's Kyle Busch. That's who we want him to be.
Right.
And he'll make that team better, because of it. Like, he overperformed this year. I expected one win and was afraid that the first win that he got was way too early and the team was going to fall apart by the end of the year. Instead, they actually accumulated a couple more wins. They didn't finish as strong as what they wanted to, but at some racetracks, he was there. So I believe in this resurgence of Kyle Busch. I believe it's the resurgence of not just Kyle Busch, but Richard Childress Racing. And if I could ask Mr. Childress to do anything, let's fire Austin Dillon and get another capable driver over there at the complex. That way RCR can add his name back to the
I feel like RCR would be an excelling two-car team if they got rid of Austin Dillon and somehow managed to keep Tyler Reddick. I feel like Kyle Busch and Tyler Reddick would have been a perfect duo, and they both would have launched RCR back to where we've seen RCR. And I know there's one storyline out there for the year that is probably missed, but I wanted to hit on the Kyle Busch deal because, as you said, Chris, not much was expected out of him because he was going from Joe Gibbs Racing, who's a top-tier team, to, I guess you can say, a mid-tier team of RCR, and Kyle Busch exceeded a lot of expectations.
Well, and you've got to remember, Kyle is a seasoned veteran, and he's a good teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Austin Dillon isn't a good student. Tyler Reddick would have been.
Right. Yeah. The smartest thing Austin Dillon ever did was call Kyle Busch and bring him to Richard Childress Racing. And that will forever give Austin Dillon a seat at the table as a business, Richard Childress Racing. As for the driving side, I believe if Austin would look deep in himself, he would realize that he's holding the race team back and offer that seat to somebody that's a little bit more capable of bringing them wins, a superstar power that can, be in the shadow there of Kyle Busch and just help that team excel and become the powerhouse. Because right now you've got other teams surrounding them, brand new teams like Trackhouse and 2311 that have showed up new to the game, but they're already clicking off wins. And you got the resurgence of RFK, of Roush Fenway. You've got to get yours while you can. And if Richard Childress isn't growing now and becoming that staple again in the Chevrolet camp, then somebody else is going to come along and steal that sunshine.
Right.
And so, Austin's actually holding the company back, even though he made the best business decision ever, and that was by bringing Kyle Busch in.
Right. And both of the Dill boys need to take a step back, get out of the cars, and learn the business from Pop.
Right. Hey, look, they've had a great career, all of them. They've been racing 15 years now. Their grandfather made them start at the very bottom. Look, saying as that 3-car could have, a potential hot hand in that seat. Just imagine if that seat did open up, who it could attract to go race there, and what names could actually fill the seat. But we're also in this transitional generation where we don't know quite who the next superstar is. And all of that's still decided, whether or not Eric Jones is ever going to break out. Like William Byron, I think, which was another humongous storyline this year, was William Byron, of course, getting finally breaking out. Like, finally not disappearing after the first 5 races of the season. This was William Byron's breakout year. And, who is the next Cup driver to break out? Will it be a Ty Gibbs? Could it be, a future with Zane Smith? Could it be, does Noah Gregson, does his career come to fruition? Who is the next superstar? I've always felt like Eric Jones had that ability. Christopher Bell like, I think he's the dark horse for the championship this year. I really don't think people give Christopher Bell enough credit for being kind of similar to Kevin Harvick. They're around at the end, right? Like, Christopher Bell might not be nowhere in the race, but if they're at the end, he's somehow in the top 5, right? And I feel like that's a talent. That is. Like, you know, it reminds me of Matt Kenseth. Kenseth never did qualify well, but by the end of the race, where was Kenseth? Right up front. Well, that's Christopher Bell, and you know, he's a legit threat this year for a championship. Was he inconsistent through a lot of the first part of the season? For sure, but the kid seems to thrive in pressure situations. So, you know, that would be probably the biggest storyline that could happen, is if Christopher Bell somehow wound up a Cup Series champion.
We are certainly witnessing a changing of the guard here. You know, and with all of this young talent coming up, you're right, there's a lot of questions. And as the guard is changing, there's going to be less of the old school drivers to learn from. And how is that going to affect the racing going forward?
Right. Obviously, we already see it mislead. They're a lot more aggressive now. And I think some of these older guys are, you know, they were in the generation of the gentleman racer. They don't race like that anymore. Once these drivers are gone, that give and take from the driver will be completely gone. Like, I feel like maybe Martin Truex Jr. probably gives Kevin Harvick a break. Kevin Harvick probably gives, you know, Kyle Larson a break here or there. You know, maybe Kyle Larson is not old enough. Maybe maybe you have to be a little bit. Maybe Amarola gets more breaks out there than anybody. It's crazy. Like, we're at the point now where Eric Amarola is you know, at the end of his career, right? Like, that's just, you know, like you said, Miss Lee, the changing of the guard. We are now down to Kyle Larson is the wily veteran of the sport, and he's not even been a superstar for a couple of years.
Right.
You know, we're kind of left vulnerable right now. Chase Elliott hasn't panned out to be the superstar that he is. Kyle Busch, over the last 3 years, has not been as productive as he was in his dominant era. Of course, the retirement of Jeff Gordon. There's been so many, you know, I guess, question marks created. Where is the superstar of NASCAR? Could it be Tyler Reddick? Could it be Christopher Bell? You know, or maybe it's one of these new guys coming along, Carson Hocevar. I read an article today that said that Carson Hocevar's career changed when Dale Earnhardt asked him after he got out of a race car when he was going to quit wrecking shit. You know, it was at that moment that Carson Hocevar said, you know what, you're right. When am I going to quit wrecking shit? He's a better driver because of it. So, you know, I don't know. Maybe a light bulb just went off. And I didn't think Carson Hocevar had any talent whatsoever when he first come in. The guy did some crazy things, bringing out precautions and, you know, just doing whatever Carson Hocevar felt like he needed to do. And I was like, man, this kid ain't going to make it, right? He's hitting everything out on the racetrack. Now, all of a sudden, is he a legit, he's got a legit cup ride coming with Toyota, who's going to give a lot of technical support to this new team that's coming. So, you know, it's going to be interesting. We've got a big season ahead of us in 2024. You know, we've seen the schedule change a little bit. I'm not so happy about that. But all in all, I think the NASCAR's got a product that they're going to grow, and somebody is going to take the reins and be the next superstar here in the Cup Series. Any closing thoughts on that? Miss Lee, did you ever put your 2 cents in on your storyline of the year?
Well, no, not really. I just wanted to circle back to when we were talking about Bowman, and Adam Stern reported that Ally and Team Hendrick just had a big to-do, and Ally CEO Jeff Brown left to become the president of Hendrick Cars, which works with Ally's auto lending group. So I have a feeling that Bowman's not going anywhere for a while because Ally's been his major sponsor.
Right.
Well,
that's interesting.
Yeah, definitely interesting. You know, just like every other major corporation in the country, you know, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back, and, you know, you got a spot here, I got a spot there, or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know, major
typically, though, when you hear
storyline.
leadership change, when you hear leadership change, though, a lot of times that kind of makes things iffy. You know, the next one that comes in to run the company may not see NASCAR as a legit asset. You know, that's the one thing that has to be that these companies have to look at is whether or not they're a legit asset. And I think that's been the problem NASCAR's had with selling sponsorship is whether or not it is a legit asset. And I think as you know, we've watched Tide leave and WorldTechnologies.com come in. You know, those are two completely different types of consumer products, right?
Right.
You know, what do you use World Technology for? WWT Worldwide Technology for? Well, I don't know, but if they have a .com, well, you know what you use Tide for. So, you know, the strategy and how sponsorship is sold and what they're actually attempting to advertise on these race cars is probably not what we were used to back in the 90s. So, you know, it's really not it's not the proven fact that me putting this on the side of the race car actually generates sales or revenue because I'm selling this product. CrowdStrike, I think, is one of the biggest ones, like from Formula One. Most people don't even know what CrowdStrike is, but they pay $120 million a year to be on the side of Lewis Hamilton's race car. So that's a whole lot of dough.
Well, and you also have to look at not only from the company's perspective, but from NASCAR's perspective as well, as they're trying to gain demographics. What are the companies that can help them draw demographics?
Right.
So, you know, that
NASCAR is selling itself in the technology world. Right. NASCAR sells itself in the technology world, and they've been doing that for quite a while. But it's a lot different type of sponsorship these days than, like I said, you know, an oil station or, you know, Tide or STP or Old Spice. You know, those are not the types of sponsors you see anymore on the sides of these race cars. Even products like M&Ms and stuff like that are no longer being displayed on the race car. So, you know, it's definitely a different environment, definitely a different way of advertising, definitely different products being advertised by NASCAR. But, hey, I'm looking forward to the growth, and I think, you know, we're still heading in the right direction. It's good to see a lot of the road courses cut back for next year. I think that's kind of a laugh in Jim France's face that, hey, you're not going to turn this into the IMSA series. Thank God Lisa Kennedy stopped that from happening. And Ben as well. Ben probably has a lot to learn still. Making this schedule is going to be probably one of his biggest regrets later on because the race teams are just going to kill him. The one thing that I did see about it was we're not running straight back to California after Daytona. So that's kind of a big plus. I didn't understand how they were going to sell something to be cost effective when we went out to LA and then had to go to Daytona and then right back to Auto Club for the West Coast swing. But so this year we'll go to Atlanta, but Atlanta in February is going to be a disaster because it's going to be freezing ass cold. Nobody's going to show up. But outside of that, I think I'm exhausted of things to say. What about you guys? Any closing remarks before we go into the Taz top picks?
I'm surprised we didn't hit the storyline of the year being RFK.
Oh gosh, right? Wow. How did we forget that one? RFK, man. For sure.
RFK has turned me into a believer.
Oh, for sure. They are a souvenir trailer worth going to. And I want to continue to see that race team headed in this direction. I think it's hilarious that a two-car operation is the dominant team, and after Ford basically forgetting about Roush over the last few years, now Roush can forget about the rest of the Ford teams because he's back on top, and I'm glad for that. I know it makes Jack sleep better at night knowing that the race team is headed back in the right direction. And kudos to Jack for knowing that hey, it was time to bring somebody else that could help better the company.
I said from the get-go that BK was the best thing that happened to that team. So I'm happy for them.
Storyline. Even bigger storyline if somehow Christopher Busch winds up as the champion. If we get two Christophers in the championship and I win the championship, that would actually be three Christophers. So, yeah, like there's Christophers everywhere. And we're all going for championships. All right, Taz, let's get your hot picks in. I know I got some favorites here.
Alrighty, so speaking of that, I gotta type it out to you guys. So for Homestead Miami Speedway, for race number 2 of the round of 8, we are looking at the favorites of Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin, and Kyle Larson. Contenders, I know some people are going to have a fit with it, but with how he's performing this year, I have no choice but to put him in this category. Kevin Harvick, Chase Elliott, and I put Brad Keselowski as a contender. For the underdogs, I have, oh boy, Mr. Wonderful Rhinestone Cowboy over there. AJ Allmendinger and Eric Almirola. And the floor is open for obviously any drivers to fill, or if you have questions or concerns about why I put drivers where I put them.
Well, at first, I see Austin Dillon, and I agree. This could be a strong track based off the car company. RCR has been pretty strong at these types of mile-and-a-half speedways. But if that's the case, I'm looking, and I just don't see Kyle Busch's name anywhere. And obviously, this may not be Kyle Busch's one of his more favorite tracks. But if you put Austin Dillon in as an underdog, I definitely would argue the point that Kyle Busch probably deserves to at least be an underdog, if not an actual contender for this race, knowing the success that RCR has had at the mile-and-a-half speedways. I'm just saying.
Kyle Busch, I can argue at least a contender, being that he has a 15.0 average finish. In 18 starts, he finished outside the top 10 7 times. He has led 465 laps out of the little over 4,500 he has completed. He does have 2 wins, and obviously those 2 wins sealed his 2 championships.
The decision where to put him has to take into consideration the fact that he is in totally different equipment this year.
I can see the point that Ms. Lee's making. That's. I feel like that at this racetrack, 1.5-mile program, we've seen success from Eric Jones. We've seen success from Trackhouse. We've seen success from RCR Racing. This is a track that favors more of a drafting style racetrack, and I think that's where these Childress cars have found a lot of speed, is those type of style racetracks. And we've seen how well Kyle Busch ran this past week at Las Vegas. Homestead is kind of a sister, not a twin sister, but definitely a sister of Las Vegas. So I'm comfortable in the contender spot.
I think I'm okay with that too.
All right, so Kyle Busch as a contender.
Right.
If we're throwing him in as a contender, then I need to throw in Tyler Reddick as a contender.
Well, that was my next argument.
That
Maybe
was
not
who
as
I
a
was
contender,
next.
but definitely as an underdog.
I wouldn't put Tyler Reddick anywhere else. I think he's a solid contender because I don't see him as an underdog because of the sense that he has competitive equipment. We know he has the capabilities of running up front and not only compete easy for top 10s and top 5s, but he can compete for wins. And at a track that, yeah, he's won on the Xfinity side and is yet to win on the Cup side at this track. He's got what it takes, and in 3 starts, he's finished outside not only the top 10 but the top 5 only once. He has 2 top 5s and 2 top 10s, so he's right there. I just don't see him as a favorite. I see him as a legit contender.
I don't see him as a favorite either, but I agree on contender.
Well, I do have one person that I know is a favorite that's not on this list, and I'm sure most of y'all would think that would be William Byron. And I do have a good feeling about William Byron, but my argument today is with Christopher Bell.
And like we've done in the past there is that I don't see Bell as a favorite, even though our contender list is basically full. We can obviously talk about him. There's been times where, well, you have to think about it this way. Well, all right, if we're gonna definitely throw Christopher Bell in the contender list, then we need to move Kyle Busch up, in my honest opinion.
Whoa. Oh, no.
Because I can't see moving Chase Elliott. I can't see moving Chase Elliott as a favorite. With how Kevin Harvick has performed this year, and despite Harvick's stats showing, I can't move him up because Harvick's literally finished outside the top 10 at Homestead 3 times out of all the Homestead races he's done, and he has the best. And yes, he has the best average finish of active Cup drivers with a 7.3. But with how Harvick has performed this year, I can't list Harvick as a favorite.
No. You see those top 8 in points, the win's going to come from one of those guys. And one of those guys has to be that favorite. And I'm not so keen on putting Kyle Busch as the favorite because he's not in that top 8. But Bell is, and so is Byron. And I believe both of those guys probably deserve to be in that favorite because, first of all, that type of style racetrack does follow into the type of style racing that Christopher Bell. Now, you could also argue that that Reddick could be just as favorable as Bell based off of that scenario. I'm just saying Bell's got the better equipment than Reddick, so you kind of automatically have to assume that he will have a better chance at a better finish at that racetrack. So I'm voting for Bell and Byron to both be in the favorite list.
Byron.
Give me some stats, Taz.
You know I'm trying to counter you, Chris. You know damn well I'm trying to.
I just don't know why we would leave people that are in the top 8 for the championship. We've seen through most of the championship, when it gets to here, we now are connected to the guys who are going to win. And that's going to be a Blaney. That's going to be a Truex. So that's going to be one of these guys that's in the top 8 because that's where the resources are going. And they're not going to go.
So our 8 active playoff drivers, we have Truex on the list as a favorite, arguably so, being that he has the second best, tied for second best average finish of active Cup drivers. 1 win, 7 top 5s, 12 top 10s, in 18 races, and has led 377 laps. The next one is Denny Hamlin. In the same amount of starts, has 3 wins, 5 top 5s, 12 top 10s. Arguably, actually there's no argument. He's easily a favorite right there. Kyle Larson, we've already listed as a favorite. He's the next one in line. 9 starts, 1 win, 5 top 5s, and 5 top 10s. The next one going down the list is Christopher Bell. Only shows 1 top 10 with a 13.0 average finish. Then you look at Tyler Reddick in 3 races, as I mentioned earlier, 2 top 5s and 2 top 10s with a 13.7. So that one, I'm thinking that one race he did not finish in the top 5 and top 10 was not a good run for him. Next one under him goes down to William Byron. 5 races, 1 win, 1 top 5, 2 top 10s, has led 134 laps. Mind you, Tyler Reddick and Christopher Bell, I forget to mention earlier, have led 3 or 4 laps each. Under Byron is Brian Blaney, who only has 1 top 5, 1 top 10, has led for 70 laps with an 18.6 average finish. And then the last one is Chris Buescher, who has yet to record a top 10 at Homestead. But Chris, we do have to remember. I know we saw it in the last round with the Roval, but it seems like the round of 8 is where a non-playoff driver can pull an upset out of the bag.
So that widens the field.
And that's why if we were highly pushing Christopher Bell to get on this list, I would put him as a contender, and I'm pushing Kyle Busch up to a favorite.
All right. Well, we still got an underdog to figure out.
I feel like an oddball. Well, I'm going to throw an oddball underdog into this one. And I know we've mentioned his name quite a few times this year, but I feel like in the last few weeks we really haven't. And that's out of front row camp, Michael McDowell. I know the equipment is not there. I know the equipment's not there. He has 2 top 10s, so I mean, he does have the capability.
Hey, and those cars are coming out of RFK shop, so.
Well,
yeah, me
talking
so.
about spoilers, what about Chastain?
That guy never quit.
I can only throw him an underdog. I can't see a legit contender out of him.
No, I can see him as an underdog.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
I mean, now we have our underdog list basically full. I mean, obviously there's more underdogs. I mean, I know there's more underdogs out there like Ty Gibbs, Daniel Suarez, to name a couple. Eric Jones, as Chris has mentioned.
No, he's like my favorite underdog.
But we have contenders and favorites to figure out. We have a Christopher Bell name floating. Guys like Joey Logano haven't been mentioned. Brian Blaney hasn't been mentioned. Just to name a couple. Alex Bowman, even.
No, I would see Joey Logano as that possible outside winner. So if anybody got to win,
Logano has a win at Homestead.
Right. What's his average?
Average finish is a 15.0, which is the same as Kyle Busch.
Wow.
But Logano, in his defense, has 4 less starts than Kyle Busch, has 1 less win, 1 less top 5, but 5 less top 10s.
Not so much the trade doesn't favor him that much. You got me.
All right, I'll do you one. I'll do you one, Chris, and see how you like this little exchange.
Okay.
If you want to push Bell and Logano on the contender list, how about we push Kyle Busch and Tyler Reddick into the favorite category?
I'm good with that.
All right. I'm good with that.
Dang,
I think we're
we
at a
all
lot.
think alike.
I mean,
no, we should decide governments. We're good as lawmakers.
Right? How about that?
Take that,
because
Speaker of the House.
I feel like this could be Tyler.
We have that decision done in a heartbeat.
That's right.
Because I feel like Tyler. All right, I'm looking at Tyler Reddick's Homestead Miami stats. And yes, the 3 years were with RCR 8 car. So in 2020, he started 24th and finished 4th. In 2021, he started 35th and finished 2nd. Last year, he was involved in a crash where he started 7th and finished 35th. But if we go back to that 2022 race, Tyler Reddick finished top 10 in at least one of those 2 stages. So he was a top 10 running car.
Well, I think it's legit. think he's a dark horse. I think he's legit.
I think he's a dark horse for the championship, but I feel like Homestead he has to get it here if he wants to run for the championship. Because I don't feel like Martinsville will be his. I don't feel like Homestead will be his milk and cookies, I should say.
Right. All hands on deck to get him here. Because Martinsville's Denny's house.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Martinsville will be a Toyota track. And you know dang well it's going to be Hamlin, Truex, or Bell going to sneak in there.
I just don't think right then.
I was waiting for it today.
All right, has it been decided? Is the panel full?
The panel is full.
All right. It's getting harder and harder, man, as we close it out. I want to thank you fans for, being with us, not only tonight, but throughout the year. We look forward to finishing the season off with a bang. Don't forget our very last show of the season will actually be the Sunday night of the race. We also will conclude, we'll begin at the conclusion of the Phoenix race after the Cup champion is crowned. And we'll come on for about an hour. We'll talk about what we watched. And we'll kiss everybody goodbye. And we'll come back and regroup for 2024 race season. But still got a couple of shows before that.
And also, Chris, not only do we crown a Cup Series champion, we're going to be crowning our first ever 110 Nation Race Chat Live NASCAR Pool champion.
Woohoo! And it could come down to me and Mr. CJ Sports. That's what we were laughing about last night. I think there's 8 points that separate us.
I mean, that's if nobody under the cut line, sneaks their way in.
Yeah, no doubt. That could happen. But you're eliminated, right?
Yeah, my one hiccup from Talladega costed me, because I literally felt the playoff drama like I was a driver during the Roval. I'm like, I need to make up points. I literally had the tie, and where it counted most in stage 3, it just came up 6 spots short.
Well, that's the way it goes. Yeah, it's been a cool season, and I like the format. And I was expecting to look and see myself further ahead than that, and then I had to remember that we reset the points. So that's the reason why everybody's so close. But hey, man, it's been a great night. Thank y'all for being here. We can't wait to be back next week, next Tuesday night. Race Chat Live, man. How about sending us off there, Taylor?
All right. We want to thank everyone for listening along to Race Chat Live here on Blog Talk Radio. If you ever miss a live show, you can always look for any forms of podcast to listen to us, such as Blog Talk Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, RSS Feed, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, GeoSavin, Podcast Addict, Deezer, Podchaser, YouTube, and on Amazon Music. Speaking of YouTube, head on over to the 110 Nation Sports YouTube channel. You'll find all sorts of content, like not only our full shows, but even clips of our shows. If you want to listen to a certain subject or get a quick glimpse of what our shows are like, not only Race Chat Live, but also Mr. CJ and Mario with the 110 Nation Sports radio show on Wednesday nights, or Jarrett's Safety to Success shows on Thursday, or even clips on the Monday show of the 110 Nation Race Chat Live exclusive. Of course, other behind-the-scenes content will probably go up during our downtime as well. And also make sure you go follow us on the 110 Nation Facebook page, also the Race Chat Live Facebook page as well. So, and we want to thank the sponsors for making the 110 Nation roll: Bears Bullish Market Talk Group, Carolina Sports Plus, TNT Designs, More to Music, Entertainment Karaoke, and Yellow Caution Flag Productions. We want to thank everyone for listening on to Race Chat Live. Same bat time, same bat place. Next Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 o'clock Central. This has been the Caution Flag of Racing Radio. Chris Creighton, Mama Bear 110 Nation, Miss Lee Reed. I'm the Tasmanian Devil Flaggers, Taz Taylor, saying good night. We'll see y'all next week.
Good night.
Night, everybody.